Hi, I'm Rachel Woody with Rachel Christine Consulting, and I have a how to write a bulletproof grant proposal using these 8 tips. My first tip for you is match the mission. Make sure you're aware of the funding agency's mission and even use some of the words they use in your grant proposal to show that you've not only read but have comprehended what their mission is and that your project aligns with their funding agency. Tip number 2. Demonstrate a proof of concept. Whether that's a proof of concept that you've tested out within your own museum or archive or have seen done somewhere else, definitely demonstrate, either written or visually, that this project has been done in some form before and that you know it will be successful. This will help convince reviewers without a doubt that this proposal and project can be done successfully. Tip number 3, clearly define the project timeline and cost. Many reviewers, myself included, have seen proposals where the timeline or costs, or both, can look like they've been made up. Now, whether that's purposeful or not, there are 2 things you can do to get around this. 1, actually go through and figure out how much time you need and how much money you need. Ask for bids, Google, talk to your colleagues, and figure out some real numbers in terms of what it costs for your project and how long it might take. The second tip for this one is to actually write out the equation for how you got there in the proposal to show reviewers that you got these numbers from a real place to figure out a feasible timeline and cost. Which leads me to the next tip. Tip number 4, collaborate and give more bang for the buck. Now for funding, especially because it is so competitive, proposals that use collaboration with other peer museums or community partners are that much more attractive. That means the funding agency's funds go to more people and could potentially do more good. For some of these projects, it's not possible to have a partner. So if that's the case, then going and committing to sharing your results from this grant project can help you get around this. Committing to presenting, writing papers, and freely sharing all of the information pertaining to this grant project will help demonstrate to the grant reviewers that you are committed to sharing the benefits of this particular grant project. Tip number 5, letters of support. Sometimes it's hard to tell if these are required or not. If it doesn't say, I recommend doing at least 2 to 3. Some grant agencies will actually tell you who they want the letters from, while others do not. I recommend, if you have the freedom to choose, to definitely have letters of support from any of the community partners that you're working with and any of the peer museums. If you're working with them, that's definitely important. If you're not working with them, it still looks good to have peer competitive museums acknowledge that your project has worth. This will help grant reviewers see that your grant project is perhaps a cut above the rest. Tip number 6, money attracts money. Now, when you're looking through the grant proposal, it's important to check the requirements to see if there's any sort of matching that needs to be done. Sometimes matching is very specific in that you need to bring in additional external funds. Other times there's in-kind match allowed where you can use a combination of internal funds and internal personnel time, equipment costs, etc. to go towards the project. An additional bonus would be if you are tying a couple of grants together for different phases of the project, mention the grant money that you may have already gotten or donor money that has been committed towards the project. Or additionally, if you know you've got a phase coming after this, state where you intend to get the funds and the likelihood of you getting them. This helps show the grant reviewers that your project, while it may be multi-phased, is definitely supported financially both by your museum and other outside funders. Tip number 7 is limit the jargon. It is so easy for us as museum and archives professionals to slip into our common vernacular. And while it's important to demonstrate that we are professionals and we know what we're talking about, sometimes our grant reviewers are not specialists in whatever field or project we're proposing. So if you're using jargon, make sure you clearly define it and be consistent in your wording, or try and avoid it altogether so that you can be very clear in the project you're proposing. Tip number 8, be sustainable. Now, if you've got a multi-part process or multi-part project, make sure that you clearly outline that within the grant proposal and clearly demonstrate how you will fund the project as it extends beyond the lifetime of the grant you're applying for. If grant reviewers see that the museum intends to continue the project after the phase of the grant, but doesn't understand how the museum will be funding that, they will be very hesitant to fund your project as it looks like it could fail or prematurely die. So, if that's the case for your project, make sure that you clearly address that for the grant reviewers. Well, those are my 8 tips to a bulletproof grant proposal. Please visit rachelchristine.com to check out my grant acquisition and management services and subscribe to this YouTube channel to continue to get tips and tricks. Thank you.